For those of you I haven't met, my name is Charles Perry-Oakton. I am a board director with the World Out of Home organisation. I'm also the independent chair for the Outdoor Media Association of Australia and MOVE, and I'm also, importantly, a media owner, like much of you in the room today. So firstly, thank you for having me here today. It's an absolute delight to be in Kuala Lumpur and to moderate today's programmatic panel. Mr. Sam Balsara yesterday said, "The future for us is not tomorrow, it has arrived." Ladies and gentlemen, programmatic has arrived, and it is a big part of the outdoor future. So as I mentioned, like many of you today, I'm a media owner. So I think to frame today's panel, what I'd like to do is share with you a little bit about the journey of my media company in Europe. So I have an office media company. It's fully digital and it operates across the UK, France, Germany and Belgium. Last year, 24% of the revenue across all of my markets was programmatic. And that was accomplished by connecting with 3 SSPs and 12 DSPs over the course of the year. Already this year, we've run more than 50 programmatic campaigns via 5 SSP connections and 18 DSPs. Clients include IBM, Netflix, Bloomberg, Microsoft, Facebook, KFC. Very big, powerful global brands. And I want to touch on Germany as a market very briefly because I think it's a really interesting market worth examining. In 2021, 25% of the total revenue in Germany was digital out of home. Of that 25%, 35% was transacted programmatically. That's more than 100 million euros. This year, digital revenue will account for about 30%, and of that 30%, about 50% will be transacted programmatically. So that is more than 200 million euros this year. My company, in fact, in July, as a matter of interest, 100% of our revenue in Germany was programmatic. And I'm not suggesting that that's normal, but it's a very interesting fact. And for all of you media owners in the room who are sitting here going, well, hang on, that's Europe, that's Germany, that's not our region, I challenge you and I caution you with that type of thinking. Because I can assure you 2 years ago, I would not have thought for a minute that I'd be standing up here talking about this sort of volume of transactions programmatically in the European and German markets. But today is about understanding what's happening in this region with programmatic, and we've absolutely got the right people on the panel today, and we're going to really respond and answer a lot of the direct questions that are coming from the media owners and, you know, some of the challenges that they've posed our panel today. So we're going to get a lot of answers, we're going to remove a lot of barriers, and we're going to make sure that one of the actions that you take away from this conference is to undertake or accelerate your programmatic strategies. So I'd like to invite our panel up to get things underway, and that is Srikanth from Moving Walls. We have Remi from Broadsign, Franck from Vistar, and Troy from Hivestack. Now, all of these panellists are absolute experts in this field, and I'm sure you know all of them, and if you don't, I would recommend you introduce yourselves before you leave today. Okay, welcome. So, let's start with the APAC region. So what I'd like to do is give each of you an opportunity just through your own platforms to give a sense as to what the current penetration of programmatic across the region is, and perhaps a bit of an insight into those markets where we're seeing a greater velocity. So I might start with you, Srikanth.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I think our core markets tend to be Southeast Asia, India, and now parts of Africa where we are active. And where we are seeing, if I have to put it in perspective, from fourth quarter last year, the last 3 quarters, we have seen at least the number of campaigns go up by perhaps a magnitude of 10x. So we've seen massive upsurge in the number of campaigns that go live. That's probably our view of where the industry is.
Okay. Remi, and what's Broadsign's experience in the region?
Hello. Yes. So I'm Remi. I'm from Broadsign. So on our side, Broadsign is a company based, headquartered in North America. So our core market, compared to what Srikanth has said, is more North America and Europe. But we are growing also the Asian part of the world. We see growth in Singapore on programmatic, Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia, of course, where growth is happening. The other countries in Asia are still exploring and trying. It's still developing, but behind. We believe that what we saw in North America and Europe is going to happen in Asia. It's a question of time. So at the moment, I would say that Asia is behind North America and Europe, but catching up quite quickly.
Frank?
Yes, so I'm Frank, based in Singapore, taking care of Southeast Asia. So obviously, to echo what Remi was saying, in this APAC region, Australia, New Zealand is really moving very quickly to what programmatic is already well established there. Southeast Asia, we see indeed a strong adoption about programmatic for the past 12, 18 months-ish. But even expanding to the other markets. So typically, for us, Vistar, we're being very active now for Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, trying to penetrating Vietnam as well, aiming for Thailand, already established as well in Hong Kong. So a lot of appetite. We see a lot of demands coming from brands, agencies, and omnichannel DSP. But I think that's probably something we discuss later. But yeah, a lot of ambitions for Southeast Asia region, definitely.
Lots of frequent flyer points by the sounds of that, Frank.
Yeah. But
Troy, and what's Hivestack?
So I represent Hivestack. So Hivestack has a very good coverage across APAC. And the way I see APAC is a very heterogeneous regions compared to North America, Europe, where every market is different, right? We heard from all the speakers in the last 2 days. And the way we see it is we divide it into 3 factors, or 3 buckets: the scaling markets, the starting markets, and the settled markets. The starting markets, including China, Korea, one interesting observation we made is supply is actually growing faster than demand. So all these media owners are getting ready for the next wave. And so a lot of the screens that you saw from Jim's presentations, from Daniel's presentations about Korea and China, some of the screens are already programmatically ready. And then we have the scaling markets, where supply and demands are growing hand in hand together because they have the perfect ecosystem. And then the settled markets, which include A and Z, and that is basically the demand that is driving a lot of the supply. So there's no one-size-fits-all strategies for APAC.
It's interesting because a market like Australia, where we have 60% digital revenues, yet programmatically at the moment, we're only looking at around 2 to 3%. So, you know, it's interesting, I guess, the difference in velocity of uptake across the different countries within the region. But what I'd like to understand from you is, what are the key factors that are driving those differences? Because I look at Australia and go, wow, 60% digital revenue, it feels to me like perhaps that should be higher, and there are other markets that perhaps are ahead of where we would have expected. So what are the key factors that are
Well, first of all, in order to grow the whole programmatic pie, you need both the buyers and the sellers work hand in hand together, and along with data and measurement partners. So I think the incentive for the buyers to join this whole ecosystem is very different, right? It's the ease and flexibility, like we saw in Nigel's presentations earlier, is the ability to now serve campaigns, increasing the effectiveness and the efficiencies. And lastly, it's really the fact that now you can plan out of home, not in silo, but part of the omni-channel strategies, because now no longer buyers are buying spot in the loop, but they're buying impressions, right? So it speaks the same language as the omni-channel. For the publisher, I think the factors, the incentives is slightly different, because programmatic bring not just incremental dollars, but incremental value to their screens. I think that's very important, because with data behind it, they can now justify why they can charge a premium for that.
So Frank, you know, Singapore's a strong market for programmatic, and we talk a lot about, in some sense, reinventing the way that we put our proposition into this ecosystem. And we talk a lot about impressions. Is it difficult for, you know, media owners to transition to this currency to help, I guess, get that velocity that we're after?
I would say it really depends from a market to another. Some media owners indeed have concern, how do we work around the impressions? We don't have that many data available. So first and foremost for us, we highlight that they should be looking at the third-party solutions to measure the impression solutions for them, to make sure there is something reliable in the market, or rely on whatever traffic they're already using. But then we hold their hands just to make sure all the way to shrink these impressions all the way to a hourly basis. And I think they're getting into that. It's just a question of educating what's going to be the benefit to them, and at the end of the day, echoing what Troy was saying, to speak the same language when we when we are discussing with digital buyers.
Are the buyers ready?
I think buyers are definitely there. I mean, they keep asking questions. Do you have inventory? It's A, B, C market, and typically the buyers are there. The demand is there. The question is how we can keep convincing, and keep educating or advocating about PDUH towards the publishers in those markets.
I think both Remi and Srikanth want to talk to that particular question around the readiness of the buyers.
Yes, I'm very excited about this topic. Yeah, I totally agree with what Troy and Franck are saying. The demand is there, the buyers are there. I think it's, I mean, for me, the main blocker for programmatic adoption in Asia, it's really the media owners who are not willing to innovate, are not willing to challenge themselves, are not willing to try. And that's really something that I think we want to push you to try programmatic. There is nothing to lose. You should basically try to join either Hivestack, Vistar, Broadsign, or Moving Walls, and see the technology, experience it, and then you will have your own point of view, and you will be able to make a decision on your own. So for me, that's the main challenge today in Asia that I've seen.
Let me take the buyer side, and then I'll take the seller side, right? So the buyers, I think, you know, with every technology, the wave one is they want to experiment. So they put some budgets on the table, they run campaigns. And many media owners that we work with then look at the eventual number and say, oh, this is just delivering me $500, $1,000 of revenue, not necessarily what they expected. Now, that's the first wave. I think that wave of experimentation is over. In most of the markets that we work with, you know, for example, in Philippines, we run maybe 3 programmatic campaigns every week, right? And it's literally all the time campaigns are running. 3 new campaigns get initiated, right? So the first wave is over. The second wave, clients are saying, how do I know that the CPM that you're representing is accurate? Now comes the difficult part of answering it. Because for them to move their budgets from $20,000 to $200,000, they need that comfort that the CPM is accurate. Now, the industry today works on an impression multiplier, which is not necessarily science-based, at least in this part of the world. It's based on what the media owner supplies as a number, and it's a static number, whether it's Friday morning or a Thursday evening, it's the same number. So yesterday's speaker, Chloe, who also heads the AAMS, talked about this initiative called Alternet 2.0. And that's something that we've been working with AAMS, where we have set up about 11 agency heads of digital, from Zaxis to Matakind, and many of them together. and we are publishing a playbook of what should be an impression multiplier methodology for this part of the world.
Yep.
Right?
We are definitely going to get onto measurement, because it feels to me that that is one of the barriers that the media owners keep putting up in this region. But, you know, Mel from Talon yesterday, I think, made a really valid point around, you know, the 4 factors that are going to dictate our ability to take share, and one of them was pace. And I think it was really, really relevant to the conversation today, because what I'm hearing is that we simply don't have enough supply into the system at the moment to potentially match the demand that you're telling us is coming. Is that fair to say, Troy?
Well, like I said in the beginning, it really depends on the market and the region. So for example, China, to my very pleasant surprise, you know, supply is growing a lot faster than demand, same as Korea. So China, just to give you guys some numbers there, we now have 500,000 screens across 10 media owners. Now we know China is a big market, but they're all ready for outside-in buys. And we just confirmed the very first campaign from the Trade Desk to buy into China, and more to come as well.
And we're going to come back to that, because one of the important things we're going to address today, and we're going to put it to bed today once and for all, is this issue of incremental revenue. But one of the important things is audience measurement, and we understand clearly the lack of uniform measurement across the region. But what I want to know is that an impediment to the growth of programmatic in this market? And how do we overcome that, or how do media owners work through that and still get to play in this ecosystem? Frank?
I think when it comes to that, there is 2 things. There is measurement and impression. So measurements, which is measuring the efficiency of the campaigns, how effective it is. And so to echo what Matt was sharing, we rely on third-party partners, so to do brand lift like Dynata, to do footfall attribution or web conversion like LiveSite, to demonstrate to the client how effective PDUH is and how complementary it can be with traditional out-of-home or even other digital channels. And then there is measurements, which, I mean, in our point of view, has to be, I mean, we as a tech provider, we have to remain agnostic. It has to be the media owner initiative to step into the impressions, to look into the impression multiplier solutions, and either use the standards in the market or use whatever data they have available on their side.
I must admit, so my experience with ECN in Europe is we're not part of the standard measurement system. So we're not part of Root in the UK, for example, but we have our own modelled audience data, and we've supplemented that with some mobile data. And I think people are under this sort of misnotion that I put my inventory into this system and it's just going to be transacted. I don't actually have to do anything else. Whereas our experience has been that we have quite a detailed programmatic deck, and a couple of slides within that deck details how we calculate our audience. And we very, very proactively promote that through your channels. We promote that through the DSPs, and we also go and approach then the native digital agencies across those markets who traditionally we've never spoken to. And our experience has been that they very readily understand how we've calculated our audience, and they get a level of comfort very quickly. But it seems to me that there's more work. It's not as easy as that, Srikanth, in this market. And I know you've been doing a bit more work around the measurement to help progress programmatic in this region.
As you rightly said, when we work with the media owners, we tell them, listen, you need to set up a digital sales team. Do not see this, because eventually, while we can deliver some campaigns to kickstart the process, the media owner has to invest in his own sales. And that's why we say you've got to take back control. You cannot be left in a situation where you're not in control of your sales. So I think it's a process of education. Some of them have started doing it. At least they start small and hire 1 to digital salesperson. Because the reality is the current out-of-home sales team is completely inequipped to talk to the digital agencies, and that's the reality. And I think that's a reality that everyone has to accept and say they need to make an investment in digital sales team.
And look, I think it's a valid point, and I know again within my organisation we did have some specific teams that we put together to look 100% at the programmatic opportunity across our business. And it's very difficult, as I'm sure everyone is aware at the moment, to find people with that expertise. It's difficult to find them, and they're generally very, very expensive. But what I can tell you is it's not nearly as complicated as it sounds. And, you know, when Nigel gets up and does this amazing presentation and our minds are blown away by all the acronyms and all of the things it can do, my experience is it's not nearly as complicated as it sometimes feels. And, you know, bringing those teams in and having them dedicated on that has definitely delivered a much better outcome. So I want to move on to a really important question, and that's this question about incremental revenue. And I really enjoyed Akun's presentation from Indonesia yesterday, and I agree completely that we should have a forum in Bali in the future. We'd be very happy with that indeed. But he also challenged you. He challenged you directly at the end of that presentation. And he was saying, in his view, that perhaps that is just cannibalising existing revenue, and it's not really new revenue. Remi, I think I read Broadsign actually put some data into the market around that, and I think you've actually validated or verified what you think that might be.
Yes, that's correct. So we are analyzing the data that goes through our SSP. So we see all the transactions, and we've done this over the years. What we see is that 70% of the revenue transacted is incremental, so coming from agencies that would have not bought out of home before, and that are, because of programmatic, buying out of home. And that's not just what we see through our SSP. What we also, when we ask the media owners, our partner media owners, they tell us that these agencies are coming back also either programmatically or direct selling, because in some cases that's also a way for them to, programmatic is also a first step, and maybe they meet these media owners and maybe they do direct sales. And also what we see also is that some global agencies are buying campaigns across the world and therefore tapping into programmatic to be able to access markets that maybe they don't have a footprint, or they don't have the local knowledge. They just buy programmatically from overseas. So that's also something that with programmatic you can achieve.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to validate that in a sense that incremental business is there. That's for sure is coming either from international business. So I think we got the demonstrations from the two previous speeches that it's there, and it's coming from the omnichannel DSP as well. And so the digital buyers, either we're talking about omnichannel DSP or we're talking about digital agencies, still there is education, to Srikanth's point, to tell media owners how they can approach those digital agencies, but they have appetites, and we offer them a new screens within the entire ecosystem. So especially after, as Nigel says, the C word, a lot of spend has moved back to digital, focusing on social, focusing on e-commerce, focusing on the things. How are they going back to out of home is because we have the capability to provide the same experience that they may expect for online channels. So meaning agility or flexibility, measurements, audience targeting, automation. And this is why there is a huge appetite for those digital agencies to go back into out of home, but through the programmatic digital out of routes.
It was certainly something we underestimated. So in our business in Europe, we're getting budgets from Canada, the US, Spain, the Netherlands, Turkey, and this is budgets that we would never otherwise have known about, let alone participated in. And I think, Troy, you and I had a really interesting conversation. I think your belief is that China represents a big opportunity with brands wanting to invest in and out of that market.
That's correct. And just to throw you some stats, not just about China, right? Because I think the two biggest export markets for my region, one is China, one is Korea. So I agree with everything that they said. The incremental source will be coming from two sides. One is from the digital spending from the omnichannel partners, and one is from all these outbound export-import campaigns coming from these export markets. And just to give you guys some examples, so in the past 6 months, we actually have served 50+ campaigns already through the Trade Desk, right? So again, a round of applause for Trade Desk. For Google, we have a very good partnership with them. They actually use DV to serve their Pixel phone campaigns through our SSP in certain markets. And Yahoo is also getting started, where they just served they just confirmed the first Rolls-Royce campaign with us from Singapore to Japan. So thank you, Mingyu, for confirming that. So a lot of these examples are already happening. We're not talking about the futures. The future is already here.
And you use the usual suspect. There is a whole bunch of other omnichannel DSP in the market that are getting more and more connected to our SSPs, and those, we shouldn't forget those as well.
This is a big topic, and of course we've had campaigns from DV360 in London recently, and we've also run many campaigns with the Trade Desk and Yahoo. So, you know, Angie and Sam and everyone talks about the opportunity going after those digital budgets. How do we get out of the pond and into the ocean? So really the conduit to that for me is the omni-channels, yeah? Because they're already in that ocean, and we can put our inventory into that ocean simply by connecting with them via your platforms. So for me, that feels like a really very significant shift in the opportunity. Are you guys working with the omni-channels, Srikanth?
No, absolutely. I mean, to come back, we've done maybe about 50 campaigns, 60 campaigns with DV360 this year. And we've just started doing with Trade Desk, and both of them are very unique when we talk about multi-market decision making. So we had a client which was Sony Pictures, the movie Bullet Train. The decision was made in the UK by Omnicom Group using Trade Desk, executed in India for a client called Sony Pictures. So, and we're seeing this very interestingly. We did another campaign which was Abu Dhabi Tourism, decision made in the UK because the agency is in UK, but the client is in Abu Dhabi, and then executed again in India. So you're seeing a lot of fresh money coming in through the omni-channel DSPs. I think that's really a positive sign for the industry.
Definitely. I mean, this example of Sony Pictures Bullet Train, we also heard about it at Broadsign, or actually we were trying to desperately find inventory to be able to play the content, the Bullet Train advertising on the screens, and it was very hard because the media owners were not there. So again, join the programmatic train, and you will be able to benefit from these budgets that are coming from overseas.
Yeah, and so you're referring to the omnichannel, and which are great contributors. So we shouldn't forget about the out-of-home DSPs as well. That's Hivestack. I mean, all of our solutions are existing, which serve different points, which have different objectives as well for clients. So all of this is just illustrating how the fast growth of the number of campaigns. Typically in 2020 in Australia, we served 43 campaigns. In 2021, we served 293 campaigns. In 2022, we expect to exceed 600 campaigns. So the growth in, obviously, I'm talking about Australia and New Zealand now, but the growth in APAC overall is there, and this is happening. It's not going away in any way.
No, and look, I agree. It's not that the DSPs that you guys run aren't and will continue to be important, and that's certainly what's created the market over the last 5 years, and it's played a really crucial role, and it still has brought that incremental revenue. But I think when we're talking about big share gains for us as a sector, we want to play in that digital pond, and I believe that's where the omni-channels will come in time. I think the other thing I wanted to touch on briefly was, this is all very well, but at the end of the day, the demand is going to be driven by campaign success. And I don't want to overdo that, because I wasn't expecting quite so many case studies in the previous presentations, but I think they're really, really important. Not only from the perspective that it drives demand from the advertisers, but I'm hoping also by demonstrating that to some of the media owners in the room today who are perhaps a little bit slow on their programmatic strategy, they can see the benefit and the upside to the advertiser. And that's going to bring money to your assets by putting them into the programmatic space. So I might ask Troy if there's anything in particular around a case study that you would like to highlight that can help us achieve that.
Well, yeah, in fact, I have a lot, and I had a hard time to debate on which one to pick. So I'll pick the most recent one, which is Uber. Uber actually spent a lot with us as a region. And in Hong Kong, they gave us a very sizable budgets to basically apply various types of targeting tactics, right? Audience targeting, day parting, weather targeting, and in-flight optimization. So all the great stuff that Nigel mentioned in his slides. And the end result is they achieve a very high level of ROI and efficiencies for their campaigns. And without going into a lot of details, the in-flight optimizations also help them to avoid a major PR crisis because we had to pull one of the creative out the very last minute during the course of the campaigns. So it was a very successful campaigns, and now they're becoming one of our largest regional clients.
It's a good point. So Air France, who's a big client of ours, who obviously during the pandemic stopped their investment across a lot of media, including out of home and sadly our channel as well, but they're coming back. And they've always been using our medium in a classic way, but they've come back in a programmatic way. And the reason for that is very clear to them, that gives them the flexibility to shift and move should, and hopefully not, a flu season and disruption occur again. It gives them that flexibility. So it'd be interesting to hear if anyone has an example of clients who have migrated from, I guess, a classic way of transacting with us into a programmatic way, and what were the key drivers of that?
Yeah, I mean, to come back to flexibility, what we saw during the pandemic, is that in March, April, the programmatic transactions on our side, on our SSP, basically dropped to zero level. There was barely any programmatic transaction going through our SSP. That was March, April, May. But then in June, July, August started to pick up again. And all of this is because in programmatic, you can turn on and off a campaign just by a click of a button. And that's really what an agency like, is that they are in full control. They can not only turn on and off, but they can also vary the level of impressions that they want to deliver. They can vary the size. So flexibility is very important for agencies, and that's why they really like the programmatic channel. So
I would break it into 2 or 3 things, right? So the first one I would say is we have to accept that programmatic is a cost layer for the agency and for the media owner, right? So the reality is it is an added cost to the transaction, which means that if the client understands what they want to buy, they perhaps are looking for automation, not programmatic. Right? So what we are seeing evolve, and I think the previous speakers also touched upon, is there are open direct type of connectivity which allows for automation. It allows for content flow. It allows for creativity. It allows for everything to be automated. And then there are situations which truly need programmatic. So to answer your question, when the budgets come from digital out-of-home budgets, or the client is clear, like we are running a campaign for Hilton now across Japan, Australia, and Thailand, the client is very clear that it's out-of-home budgets, but they want the automation. So they're not interested in programmatic then, because they feel that, one, I don't get visibility to what's going on as much, but if you give me automation, I'm happy with it.
It's an interesting point, because I don't sit up here for 1 minute and suggest that as an industry we're transitioning from classic to programmatic. Classic trading will always have a role in our businesses. We will always have very big clients who will want 4 weeks of guaranteed display across our assets, and they'll be prepared to pay, and they want that guarantee. So they don't need to transact with us programmatically. But I'm very transparent with those clients who do. They will pay a premium to transact programmatically. And in fact, our programmatic revenue is the highest yielding revenue that we generate across our network. Because if I'm going to enable a client to come and pick the eyes out of my inventory, they will get the highest return on investment, because they're choosing the spots in the right time, in the right place, with the right context. and as a consequence, they should be paying more for those spots. And I didn't really intend the discussion to go into a pricing discussion today, but it may well come up, but again, our experience has been we certainly don't transact remnant inventory in the programmatic world, and the inventory that we do trade is our highest yielding inventory. We're running out of time, but I'll touch on it very briefly, because one of the other big challenges for media owners when we transition, or we're playing in both, you know, the classic world, the linear world, and also this loopless digital world, is managing our inventory. And I know because this year we're connected with 5 SSPs and we've been doing campaigns with about 18 DSPs. And there's been a lot of work done recently around header bidders and a lot of talk. And I think it's a necessary development for us to help manage our progression in this area. And it's not, for me, it's not a point for you to compete upon, because it's going to facilitate programmatic across everyone's platform. But I'd like Frank, because I know you guys have done a bit, as well as Troy, just to give us some insight into what you're doing around header bidders.
Yeah, so in online ecosystem, you're calling header bidding solution. So we call it Vistar mediation solution. So the idea is to one mediation solution that gathering all the different SSP that are competing for the same ad placement. So the media owners can optimize with efficiencies its yield based on actual decisions and actual insights. So it's quite straightforward. It's based on analytics of the auctions, and that really, the point is really to optimize the revenue management that the media owners is going to do with programmatic, and rebalance with whatever they want to do on the direct sales as well.
So just to summarize what Frank just said, I think the way to think about it is we're having a very unified way of auctions. So pivoting from a waterfall way of auctions to unified. And what it means for media owners is you got a chance to really monetize your inventory and sell it to the highest bidder. And what we have done is header bidder is still a relatively new infancy product, you know, within the out-of-home industry compared to other digital channels, like Frank said. So what we've done is we'll work with Prebid. So Prebid is an organization globally that works on header bidder, on open source unified auction solutions for publishers for all the other channels. And now we are basically spearheading the outdoor for header bidder for within the Prebid community. So in the next 2 years, what I see is a lot of the media owners in this room will be adopting these solutions, which would enhance your yield management for all the bids coming from the DSPs.
Right. I'm going to finish with 3 quick questions with very quick answers from all of you. So I'll start with Srikanth. So what I want to know, in 3 years' time, when we're sitting in Bali having our next panel, what will be your biggest market in the region?
Wow. Whatever I say will make a few people unhappy here, so I've got to watch what I say. But if I kind of turn it around slightly differently, where are my clients asking me for inventory today? I would say most of them ask for inventory in Indonesia, India, Japan, Australia, and Thailand.
That's the whole region, Srikanth. That was a very long one-word answer, thank you. Remi?
I still think Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan are going to lead the way on the programmatic side. So I will bet on this.
You're not going to upset anyone. We're throwing out the challenge, okay. Frank, what?
Looking at Southeast Asia, I will name 2 markets. Possibly Indonesia because of the size of the populations, or Thailand because of the digital adoptions of screens on the ground. Okay. Either way. Troy? Sorry if I'm making anyone upset.
I would put my bet in China. I know simply because I see the speed of how suppliers and media owners are advocating this whole programmatic digital out-of-home concept. So I think domestically and also from export point of view, I think China would really be contributing to this whole ecosystem.
Okay, the next one-word answer, Srikanth. What percentage of digital out of home, so not all out of home, but digital out of home, will be transacted programmatically across the region in 3 years?
And I would say perhaps 25%, a quarter of it should go through programmatic.
Okay. Remi?
25% too.
I'm going higher, 30%.
Troy?
I'd say 15 to 20%.
Okay. And the last question is, so what percentage of the digital out-of-home transacted programmatically across the region in 3 years will be via omni-channel DSPs?
My guess, probably as high as 70%.
Yeah, 80%, I would say.
Roughly 50. I guess it depends of the expectation of the client as well. Either they want omnichannel campaigns or out-of-home specific campaigns. And at the end of the day, out-of-home is still very independent channel. So yeah, 50.
I'm just going to take the average, 75.
So listen, I think today we have answered all the questions of the room. And unless there are questions to the contrary, I will expect that everyone agrees that we've dispelled the myths around incremental revenue. Tick. Measurement isn't a barrier to participate in the programmatic space. That isn't a reason not to participate. So, like any good conference, it's not the information that you take away today, but it's what you do with that information. What are the actions? So when you get back to the office tomorrow, what are you going to do differently than what you did before you came? And it's very clear from Tom that we need to lean into the industry associations. We need to do a lot of work around measurement across the region. But the third thing that I'd like to challenge the media owners in the room today is to lean much more into this programmatic opportunity. It is here and now. And if you're not participating, you're missing out on money. And as Charmaine says, cha-chink, money counts. And there's money to be had, and you need to be speaking with these gentlemen today and no later. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for your expertise.
Thank you, Charles.
And we'll give people an opportunity to ask any questions that they might have.
Good afternoon. So I'm a little bit surprised. Besides Srikanth, none of you spoke about India. What's lacking? What do you think is? What keeps you away from thinking about India? Coming to India with your solution.
Well, let's start
I
with...
can't answer that because he said I mentioned India.
Besides,
I'm ruled out from answering
that's for
that.
the international. That's for
Okay,
the other three.
Frank.
We should have discussed that last night or around a drink. That would be easier, I guess. No, I mean, India is definitely, for us, I can speak for ourselves, is definitely on the roadmap. We are progressing market by market, just making sure we have a full solutions available in the market. But the potential is huge, probably in 3 years' time, depending on the adoption, depending on the demand. Because we are not right now in India, but it's coming. We will have a better understanding where we'll be in 3 years' time. But obviously, with the size of the market, there is a huge opportunity, yes.
Yeah, I see that. One more question, and we're going to talk later. Can I ask one more question, please? How would you manage proof of play and verification if you're doing such huge campaigns across countries? What's your methodology for it in your softwares?
So the proof of play is passed on from the player to the SSP to the GSP. So in the same way that for a direct campaign, we record proof of play and you can extract it from the platform, it is not only extractable from the platform in programmatic, but also passed on to the DSP as well as a verification of what has played. So for me, it's even better.
When you say GSP, what do you mean exactly?
The DSP, so demand-side platform.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I can just add on to that, so when you speak to some of the clients, especially some government clients which are very compliance driven, they start to ask, about those proof of posting, blah, blah, blah. So
That's why we start to step into the third-party verification. So I don't know where Justin is, but we have a partnership with a couple of partners, including OIS and some others, to demonstrate how it can be assessed at from a third-party point of view, how the campaign has been delivered across the different markets. I think
there's perhaps a question that you didn't ask. If 3 years from now, if only 15 to 30% goes programmatic, which has verification, all of that inbuilt with partners, what happens to the balance 70 to 80%? I think that's where automation has to come in, not just in terms of planning, booking, content change, but verification also has to come in. And like Frank said, we also work with third-party verification companies who can verify so that the reporting may be done off our platform, but the verification is done by a third party.
Yeah, so I just want to add that, for every platform that you log into, you can actually see the play logs already as verifications. However, what's lacking is a third-party measurement verification company that have the global scales. So right now, advertisers for outdoor buy is still using a very, very silly way to verify it. So I can tell you one of the campaigns that we just did in Hong Kong, the way they want us to verify is take a newspaper for that day, and then take a picture of the newspaper and the ad to verify it's been played. Yeah.
That sounds scalable. Okay, listen, that's time. And one last question. We'll make it a quick one.
Yeah, it's a question posed a little bit as a challenge. I think the chronology of the speed that we're going to see programmatic grow has to follow the measurement. I think we cannot participate programmatically without reliable and verified information going into the system. And I think there's a challenge to the platforms to scrutinize the information that you receive, because those who've got information, like Charles said, they've got information that's not in an industry currency, but it's very easy to be verified. When you've got the data, you can play and it'll grow and it'll be wonderful because it is incremental revenue. If you use data that's not verified, you're getting straight down the avenue of fraud, where the online business is fighting to kind of address where that business has gone.
Look, that's a very big question, but we'll answer it very briefly in this case. The data that you're selling your billboards on today successfully is the same data you can sell your billboards within the programmatic system as well. So I think to a large extent we can remove that barrier to get things underway, but ultimately in the long term, to really see the scale, uniform measurement will really accelerate that. And we'll finish with one last comment from Troy, because I had a really interesting conversation with Troy about 2 media owners in Hong Kong who were providing impressions data to their platform. They were literally side by side, but they provided very different data. So to your very point, they do have a role to play to synthesize some of the data from the different, publishers, but I think that's a really important conversation for you guys to be having.
Exactly, and in fact, Google told us very openly that we have a role to play in helping these media owners to sort of verify their impressions, because it's only when they believed in a very certified method of calculating these impressions would they onboard these screens into the DV platforms. So we are really helping these media owners in Hong Kong, and give you an example, because in all the markets that we operated in, we already have built a data marketplace, meaning we work with different data partners, we work with telco partners, and with these data that we can triangulate and help them to come up with an impression multiplier. And the last piece of the puzzle is we can work with another third-party measurement company to put a stamp of approval on all the numbers that we verified, so that it is a way that DV would approve and all the buyers would approve to it. I think Japan is always the poster child that I use in the regions. So what you saw from Fuji-san's presentations yesterday and Jinai-san's discussion today is we partner with Liveboard using Docomo data, which is the telco company data, and no question asked from the domestic buyers and international buyers, because you have a very credible methodologies to calculate the impressions for all the screens in Japan.
Great. Please join me in thanking the panel for their insight today.